How can the Minnesota Vikings learn from the loss to the Detroit Lions? There are multiple factors that played into the Vikings losing, including having their defense exposed, but it wasn't all exposed because one area was absolutely phenomenal. We have more Ed Ingram and Dalton Risner discourse, and the Vikings got flexed to Sunday Night Football. Which game? We're going to talk about all of that and more here on the Real Forno Show.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Real Forno Show, hosted by the one and only Tyler Forness. A to Z Sports sought him out to be their Minnesota Vikings reporter and NFL analyst. And he's a proud contributor over at SKOL North's Purple Daily. Tyler is also the captivating host of The Good, The Bad, and The Hungry on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network, and a founding member of Vikings First and SKOL.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Real Forno Show. I'm your host, Tyler Forness, and with me, as always, in the top left corner, he is producer Dave. Dave, the Vikings are no longer undefeated. There's a loss on the schedule, but it was a really weird way to get there. Now that we're a day after, what are your kind of overall thoughts about the game against the Lions?
My overall thoughts are that we went toe-to-toe with probably the best team in the NFC. Obviously, probably the best quarterback in the NFC, and we almost won it. That is great. We were missing Cashman on the defense, which I think makes a huge difference on how much Detroit is successful. And obviously, we're still missing T.J. Hockenson on the offensive side, which I think would add further offensive capabilities in that going against that defense to win. But it was close. Hey, we only lost by 2 points, and it was down to the last minute. So, hey, you're not going to go 17-0. Sorry. Not in today's NFL. Not in the fact that we've got a transition quarterback playing. Sam Darnold, the plan is to be the transition between him and J.J. McCarthy. J.J. McCarthy will play next year. Sam Darnold's doing great and keeping us competitive, and we are still the second best team in the NFC with a 90% chance to make the playoffs. Hey, 5-1, we're rocking it.
Yeah. I don't really feel too bad about this loss. There were a lot of different factors that if you change one little thing, the Vikings probably get the win. But when you play a really good football team, it's increasingly hard to be able to do all of those things. And the Vikings have played multiple teams over 500 this year, and they are 2-1 against those teams. Their 2 wins being against the Green Bay Packers and the Houston Texans, who oddly enough played each other yesterday in a very close game similar to the Vikings game against the Lions. And then, of course, the Lions. So the top of the NFC North is the 5-1 Lions, the 5-1 Vikings, and the 5-2 Packers. The Vikings are 1-1 in the division, the Lions 1-0, and the Packers 0-1. It's going to be a really, really tight race to kind of see how things progress moving forward. But I think we need to start talking about how the game progressed throughout the course of Sunday. And I think the biggest takeaway is Brian Flores' defense both got exposed and proved how great they were all in one package. So let's unpack that a little bit. Look, the defense last year got massively exposed with Dagger, where you have the inside receiver running a clear out route, either a go or a deep post, and the receiver underneath cutting under with a dig route. Very simple concept. Pretty much every offense has a version of this. And Kevin O'Connell's got multitudes of versions of this where he finds really unique and creative ways in order to get Dagger open and have it come around. So they'll use it with motion. They'll use it in bunches. They'll do all kinds of things to be able to activate it because Dagger is a really good route concept it's used by everybody. But when you run what Brian Flores does and almost all of his coverages, you have Dagger as the beater. And when you have Dagger as the beater for all these coverages, well, if you're playing cover 2, if you're playing Tampa 2, if you're playing cover 0, if you're playing quarters, guess what? Dagger beats all of them. And because Dagger beats all of them, you can just spam it and have a lot of success. And the one thing that's really helped the Vikings over the course of the first few weeks, really being able to prevent a lot of that, is getting pressure. Now, the Vikings did get pressure on 17 dropbacks with 21 total pressures, Dave. But they only got home 4 times, and they did not make those pressures count. And that's the big thing, because Jared Goff only had 3 total completions on the day. You have to be able to make them count. Pressure isn't enough. We can look at the raw pressure numbers and be like, oh, the Vikings got pressure on Jared Goff with 21 different pressures. That sounds pretty good, but it's also worrisome because when you have that many pressures, you need to get home more and you need to have more of an impact. And to me, that's where you kind of come into not all pressures are created equal. And the almost strip sack on Jared Goff, where Jonathan Grenard was this close, you got to nail that. You have to be able to get in there and make the play. Those are going to be the biggest differences in having success or failing as a defense, especially with how the Vikings like to live, where I don't know if I can honestly say they're okay with just giving up the flats and dagger, but it just may be, you know what? We know these are weaknesses, but we can counteract that by just being aggressive and getting home and making an impact and not letting these route concepts develop. But when you play a good offensive line, they can develop, Dave. And that's what we saw happen on Sunday afternoon. Just frustrating on multiple levels there because they had the talent to stop it. They had the ability to really hinder what the Lions were trying to do, but they just weren't able to get home, and Goff was dynamite under pressure. One stat that Alec Lewis of The Athletic pulled going into the week: if Jared Goff held the ball for more than 2.5 seconds, second in the NFL in EPA per play. Less than 2.5 seconds, 30th. So if you force him to get that ball out really, really quick, you seemingly have an advantage, right? Problem is, when you bring pressure and they block it well, which the Lions have a great offensive line, so it's really not a surprise that they blocked it well. Jared Goff can hold the ball for 2.8 seconds and find that dig route 15 yards down the field and gash you. Those little things are the biggest difference in a win and a loss. And the Vikings, unfortunately, are going to have to learn that lesson. But hopefully, they're going to learn it and they're going to be able to do some modifications with their coverages on the back end and come out of this feeling and being a lot better.
Well, do you think B-Flow, because to get the pressures, he increased the blitz rate yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
And by increasing the blitz rate, you are lessening the coverage in the back end. Now, he obviously said he's going to do that, fight fire with fire, and that was his game plan. And it's partially to beat the best offensive line in the league. Would you sacrifice pressure or draw back the blitzes, draw down the amount to sacrifice pressure to get better coverage on the back end if that could help defeat the dagger? Now, I do believe, like I said before, having Blake Cashman out hurt that as well because he would be covering that sort of route.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that plays into it a little bit. And I think one thing we have to quantify with pressure, Dave, or with the blitz rate is, and I know you know this, but for those of you guys that don't, blitzing means sending 5 or more pass rushers. It does not mean you're bringing 6, 7, 8, or 9 every single time. All you have to do is bring 5. That constitutes as a blitz. So you can have 6 guys on the back end. You could play man coverage with a deep safety. You send 5, that's a blitz. So Flores isn't sending 7, 8, 9 regularly. He's sending 5 and 6, meaning you have a decent amount of players on the back end, but he likes to play zone with it. And when you play zone, you're going to have holes, especially when you have less people in coverage. And I think one of the interesting things that they could do to really combat that, and I think they will be seeing more of it than with Cashman coming back, either against the Rams or the Colts, because Kevin O'Connell earlier today said just that. We're not ready to rule him out for Thursday. He's making progress, but it feels like he's for sure going to be ready against the Colts, which that game got flexed to prime time. So we're not going to have a noon game. We're going to have a 7:20 game, which, you know what? I appreciate. I like night Vikings games. You know why? I have 3 TVs, so I can watch 6 games and then focus on just the Vikings game at late night. Oh, I love it. I love it so much. But I know not everybody does, and I understand that, especially, Vikings fans on the West Coast or Vikings fans over in Europe, which we'll have to talk to Jonas. Who knows if he'll be able to make the post-game stream, because it'll be like, 6 a.m. when we start?
Yeah, something like that.
But yeah, I love it for me. And quite frankly, in this context, all I care about is me here. I love it for me. But we will be here
because it'll be over the air and no delay.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And you know what? Let's kind of take a look here at one of the positives for the Vikings defense, because we talked a lot about negatives. All right. One of the positives for the Vikings defense, Dave, they were tremendous against the run. They were excellent. And one of the tough parts about quantifying some of this is, and why we like to use detailed examples, why we like to use advanced metrics, is because raw stats. Oh, total rushing yards. It doesn't do anything. Total rushing yards doesn't give you any context of what happened. So Vikings gave up 144 yards on the ground, 5.3 yards per carry. Doesn't sound great, but they made them earn it. And if you take out the 45-yard rushing touchdown by Jahmyr Gibbs, which I'm going to be honest, perfect play call. Josh Metellus was coming on a blitz. He goes too wide, doesn't sense run, and that C gap was wide ass open. Hits it, and dekes out Cam Bynum in the open field, touchdown. Like, sometimes you just have the perfect play call, and there's not a whole lot you can do about it. And that's what happened to the Vikings there. Throughout the rest of the game, though, 26 carries, 99 yards against a rushing team that in neutral situations, meaning win probability between 10 and 90%. So you take out all the quote unquote garbage time that you had against the Packers, the Texans, even the 49ers. When you have that kind of win probability, the Vikings are phenomenal in neutral situations against the rush. First in the National Football League. And the Lions are best in the National Football League at .203 EPA per play. The Vikings, they've held them to a negative .40 EPA per play against the run, and a success rate of just 26%. The Vikings beat that ass. They stopped the run. They prevented the run game from taking over. They prevented the run game from truly gashing them. And I think that should be celebrated because of how explosive this running team has been consistently. You had the David Montgomery injury, but he came back pretty quick. So I'm not even really going to factor that in, because while he was out, we got one of those Jahmyr Gibbs touchdowns. It's when you stop a running game like that and you stop it with consistency, which the Vikings did, that's a huge feather in your cap, because the running game can be so debilitating, demoralizing. You allow a run and then they truck you at the end of the play. Oh, there aren't many worse feelings in the world when just getting beat on the football field. So hats off to the Vikings run defense. They've been really good all year, and they stepped up in a huge way on Sunday. And I think they deserve the credit for that.
Yeah, they did well. And against two of the best backs in the league, in Montgomery and Gibbs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Montgomery is one of my favorite players in the league. I really, really like him. He does a little bit of everything for you, and he is a little bit more of a power back, where you have the really fast Jahmyr Gibbs, who's not very big in stature, but he's so explosive to where it kind of balances things out. I really like this running game, and the Vikings just stifled it. They did a great job, Dave. They did a tremendous job in stopping the run game, and they made Jared Goff beat them. And I think that was the right plan. Now, we talked a lot about the pressure and how they got 21 total pressures, pressure them with 17 dropbacks. They got 4 sacks, but they just did not make their pressures impactful enough. And I think that is the biggest takeaway for me in this game. You have to make the pressures more impactful. And I think they will be able to do that moving forward, because they're not going to face offensive lines like this every week, and they're going to learn from their mistakes and their shortcomings. But right now, I think they're in a decent enough spot.
If they can clean up the self-inflicted penalties. I think we win that game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's I'm not super worried. I'm actually pretty positive about the defense overall because I think Flores will make some of those decisions to improve the team. But the one thing that does worry me is it's a short week and the Minnesota Vikings face the Los Angeles Rams on Thursday afternoon. And we're going to have a lot more about the Rams on Wednesday. But I do think with the Rams game, I'm worried about Dagger because they love to run Dagger. You want to know why? Well, you can just look at the Vikings offense. You know what O'Connell likes to do? Run Dagger. And Mills, which Mills is a similar run or pass concept, but it's not quite the same. The inside receiver runs a dig, and then the outside receiver runs a post. So that's more of like a quarters beater to get that deep safety to crash, and then you have the post over the top. Or if the deep safety stays with the post, then you have the dig underneath. It's a similar concept. So those concepts are very prevalent in both how the Vikings and Rams like to play football. Plus, you have Yankee, which is a deep crosser and a post on the backside of it. Like those things will work against how the Vikings like to play defense, and I'm a little worried that it might be exposed again. But then you have a 10-game, or sorry, not a 10-game, a 10-day break until you play Sunday night against the Colts, which are a very RPO deep shot heavy team right now, as Anthony Richardson kind of still learns the nuances of an intermediate and short passing game because he is awful in accuracy, short, behind the line of scrimmage, and medium. And he's the best in the NFL at deep balls. There's nobody better in the NFL throwing deep than Anthony Richardson. It is the wildest passing chart that you'll ever see. He's so good at hitting guys accurately deep, but he just can't do it short.
Going to be interesting. Now, you would think since the Vikings offense practices against the Vikings defense, that B-Flow would come up with some answers on how to defeat those digs and crossers. Shy of not having Blake Cashman.
I think Cashman does play a really big factor because of how good he is in coverage, and you laid that out really nicely earlier, Dave. But I do think I don't think they disguise things well enough against the Lions, and I'm in the midst of going through the tape and trying to figure out, hey, what does this look like? And we'll have more answers on Wednesday, and I'm hoping to have a guest to kind of preview the Rams game on Wednesday. We'll kind of find out if I'm able to get that accomplished. But I'm really looking forward to seeing how we can grow and evolve, because even though the Vikings lost, it wasn't like the Vikings got their asses absolutely whipped. They were in the game. They had a chance to win it late, and they nearly pulled it out. This was a black and blue division special. They beat the piss out of each other. One guy came out barely alive. It's kind of how it was. But I think we should talk about that final offensive series, not the Hail Mary series, the final offensive series. People were complaining about the play calls, Dave, and I don't get it. Oh, I get it because it was just run, pass, right. Which it's under 4 minutes to go. You need to drain the clock. They got 5 yards on the first running play. Like, what are you expecting them to break it out for 30? 5 yards is a good first down. And then, okay, you have 2nd and 5. You know that you're going to try and throw the ball on 3rd down if you don't get it. So, hey, let's try another run. It was successful on 1st down. It's been pretty successful throughout the course of the game. Let's try and do it again. And guess what? They did. And you know what? It got a yard. 3rd and 4. This is where I hate the play calling. And I will say, Kevin O'Connell said Jordan Addison did not finish his route because they did not want Addison and Jefferson to be that close together. And look, they were incredibly close to each other. You don't want that kind of spacing. You want spacing that's farther out. And the reason being you want that kind of spacing is because you don't want multiple defenders in the spot that you're going to throw the football. You want to have the defenders spread out so you can create a throwing lane. And they didn't have that accomplished, but it wasn't because they weren't trying. It just didn't work. And the throw by Darnold to Jefferson was a little too hot and too high, but it wasn't like a bad throw. It was just barely off the mark. What I hated about the play was you eliminated 2/3 of the field. Sprint right option. I hate it. It should die.
Hey, something different.
You know what? I hate it. 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 I hate it.
At least Darnold
Don't
didn't
run
back across his body.
But
I
guess at least there's that.
Get T.J. Hockenson in there. Hopefully Thursday night.
Why choice?
Mm-hmm.
That's coming back, baby. That's coming back. And I'm really excited for that. I'm really excited because why choice is awesome. And it's something that the Vikings can utilize a lot with TJ Hockenson. That was like their, hey, I need 8 yards. Go get it. Hockenson running a choice route. Easy money. Easy money. Now, will the Vikings be able to accomplish that? And we'll see. We'll see. Hockenson might play on Thursday. And if he does, hallelujah. Please and thank you. We do need to.
Wagering he's going to play.
I think so. Mm-hmm. I think so.
And you got to remember, when he left the game, he was basically wide receiver 2. And so now the question is, will Sam Darnold be as comfortable with him as previous quarterback was? Mm-hmm. Or will there be time developing chemistry?
I'm sure there will be some time developing chemistry. I mean, how can there not be? How can there not be some time to develop chemistry? Like, it'll happen. But I'm also not super concerned about it because I think it will, it'll get there. I do want to talk about.
There's enough of it to get the win on Thursday night. That's what I care about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I do want to talk about this whole Ed Ingram, Dalton Risner thing because, and I got most of my frustrations out, so I'm not gonna be as animated. But this discussion about Ed Ingram PFF grade bad, he needs to be replaced. Go watch the film. Go understand the context of what the Vikings are asking these guys to do. Go understand the shortcomings that Dalton Risner has, and by bringing him in could hurt the offense more than Ed Ingram you believe he does. Ed Ingram is a really good run blocker, especially when they run duo. He bullies people. He throws people around and drives them into the ground. You know what Dalton Risner doesn't do? Any of that. Ingram can climb to the second level. Dalton Risner can't. It's just so infuriating to see so many people look at, PFF grades say bad. No, you just don't want to watch out the offensive line. And it's so inherently frustrating, Dave, because we sit here and we talk about it and we say the same things. You want to know why we say a lot of the same things? It's because they're still true. Where I'm not here trying to spew some kind of narrative just to prove I'm right. I'm telling you, Dalton Risner is going to be a downgrade for what this offense is trying to do. The run game has been very successful this year. Why? The interior of the offensive line is run blocking incredibly well. You want to know what Dalton Risner doesn't do? Run block. All of a sudden, you take that out of the equation, that's going to impact how the defense guards you. It's going to impact how the defense plays coverage. It's going to impact how the defense blitzes you, pressures you. And you know what? It's going to have a negative impact on the passing game. So you can look at, he got bullied by Aleem McNeil, or hey, he was on the ground that one Sam Darnold scramble. He had one pressure allowed, a mid-60s pass blocking grade, which, you know what? That's above average. We're not asking him to be great. Just don't be a disaster. And you know what? The only game he was a true disaster, guess who he played? Dexter Lawrence. Like, Even the game against the New York Jets, he was charted with 5 pressures. One of them was a bad stunt. One of them, he did the splits because he slipped on really bad field conditions that were wet and just awful. The other ones, I didn't see the pressures. I saw maybe one other one. So I don't know where they're kind of getting them. Like, the film is much better than the PFF grades. He is still a liability in pass protection, but they're also asking these guys to play at an extremely high difficulty level by letting route concepts develop down the field. And you know what? As an overall unit, they are performing well. You don't mess with and completely deteriorate the running game just because you want to see a tiny bit of improvement in pass protection. It's frustrating to see so many people just lean into the PFF grades without even trying to get the context of watching the film, without even understanding what the Vikings are trying to do. And these are people who should know better. It's very frustrating.
What about the fans that say it can't get any worse?
Yeah, you saw Dakota Dozier and Drew Samia. Like, Ed Ingram's significantly better than both of those players. It's that simple. I've had issues with how PFF has graded so far this year. You can tell that there's been changes in some of the methodology and the formulas. And we got this quote from Dalton Wasserman of PFF because I asked him about this. And Ed Ingram has bad losses, but he doesn't have many losses. And I think that's important. So this is a quote from Dalton talking about it. So the two things that think to look at are when you find pass rush win rates, as well as because that'll tell you even if Darnold gets rid of the ball before, say, the pressure is coming, that'll tell you really how often someone like an Ed Ingram is losing his block, and the pass rush grade is really the big thing. So you talk about, okay, Ed Ingram got a 29 in pass blocking grade and Garrett Bradbury got a 50, talking about the Jets game. But, Ingram's only got 4 more total pressures, right? Dalton said 4 pressures is not going to cost 20 points in our pass blocking grades. That's not how it works. There's other things behind the scenes. Let's say, again, if Darnold gets rid of the ball before pressure can get there, we still grade those blocks right. And if you won or lost, then how quickly you won or lost. So the pass blocking grade is the biggest thing when it comes to try to boil all that together, because it does factor in the amount of pressure, but also the quality of it, meaning the pressure itself. That's just the sort of thing our pass blocking grades at PFF try to boil down to as much as we can into one number. Is the combination of the amount of pressure and the quality of it. You could give up 3 pressures in a game instead of 10 and still have a really bad pass blocking grade if you get beat bad on those 3. So there's a lot of context that goes into it. I have issues with that quote because you're going to tell me that a guy has 3 pressures, but those 3 pressures were really bad, so his pass blocking grade overall gets cratered to like a 29. I think that's inherently frustrating because it completely disregards like 30 reps that are good, and it craters it, and there's no nuance or context in explaining it. Now, if you talk to somebody directly at PFF, you're going to get that, and things make a lot more sense. But the one thing with PFF is it's so public facing with, hey, they're going to look at the raw grade number, they're going to look at the pressure number, and they're not going to think about anything else because this is what PFF said. And to me, I think that's the frustrating part about trying to have a genuine conversation about performance, because so many people, when throwing these numbers out, void any and all context when having these conversations. And to me, that's inherently frustrating because Ingram is not as bad as those numbers are saying. He is average or to slightly below average right now. He's not awful. I don't care what the PFF grades say. He's not awful. And so many people are acting like he's this, like, I don't know the right word.
2 guards or whatever the number is.
They're talking about him like he's a Judas or something. He's not. He's fine. He's objectively fine. It's just frustrating.
They're going to start. They may start Risner, and people will see. And hopefully Risner plays better if they do end up starting him, like's being indicated.
Yeah. All right. I still went on an impassioned rant, but I just get so annoyed, Dave, with how many many people just completely lack the understanding of what Ingram does and what he's being asked to do and how successful he is at those things, because I don't think those grades accurately represent what he's doing. And to me, that's inherently frustrating because it's completely taking things out of context.
Well, it's because fans want the grades to be good, and they want their fantasy scores to be good, and they want the wins to be up there. It's that simple.
Mm-hmm. And you know what? I want the grades to be good too. I really do. But sometimes the tape is going to tell you more. And I think the tape tells you a lot more. Plus, Dalton Risner, there was nothing on the tape last year that said he was a good starting guard.
Yeah, but that was at left guard. This is at right guard.
Oh, fuck off. No. Hey, you know what? He's going to be better at the position he's never played in the National Football League, Dave. Oh, God, that's phenomenal. I know this isn't coming from you.
Know.
I know it's not coming from you. But if I hear that point, I'm going to explode. No. Tell me what redeeming quality Dalton Risner had that was better than Ed Ingram. Was he slightly better in pass protection? Yeah. Sure. Is one less pressure a game going to all of a sudden surmount to this massive output for the Vikings offense? No, you know what it's going to do? It's going to crater the running game. It's going to crater the run game. All those really nice dual runs. Oh, yeah, and then they're just going to have the linebackers slant to the left. Like, you can't do that. I'm mad now.
I knew I could get you going.
Yeah, and you did. You got me going good. Risner showed nothing that he was a starting caliber guard. You want to know how I know that he showed nothing? Not just by my own eye test. The Vikings agreed with me. How? They signed him to a contract in May that was basically like, hey, if you end up starting any games, we'll give you a little bit more money. But they also have a contract where they could cut him and not really have much of an impact on the salary cap.
And that's after all 31 other teams passed on him.
For 2 months.
Mm-hmm.
The league agrees with me. He's not a starting caliber guard. If he was, they would have given him $4 or $5 million. Like, guards were getting $20 million in free agency. $20 million. There are other teams that are going to moneyball the offensive guard spot. And guess what? They'll give a guy $5, $6, $7 million. Ezra Cleveland got 9.5 from the Jacksonville Jaguars. And like one of the things like, oh, PFF says he's the best left guard in the league. Sure. But here's the thing about Ezra Cleveland. The Vikings were never going to keep him. That's why they traded him. They did not want to keep him in their long-term future, so they moved on. You can agree or disagree with that. That's just reality. The Vikings did not want to keep him. And you know what? You could argue that they were right, that he wasn't worth what he's now getting paid in Jacksonville. You can argue that. But here's the biggest reality check of all. The film tells you more than a singular grade. The film tells you more. Go watch the film. NFL Pro. NFL Plus. It's there. You can even filter out a bunch of the clips. You can even filter out clips where Sam Darnold saw pressure. And then you can make those determinations for yourself. The whole goal of this show is not just for me to sit here and spout opinions like I'm some messiah. I'm not. I'm a guy who absolutely loves this shit. And I'm going to give you my honest takes. And you know what? I hope you learn things from me. But the biggest thing I want you to learn is you can find the answers for yourself. Find them on the tape. And it's, you know what? It's okay. It's kind of intimidating at first. It's okay if you don't know what you're looking at. The more you do, the more you'll learn. Ask questions of people who are smarter than you, like I do all the time. I'm about to sit down with somebody I really respect who knows more about this game than I do, so I can learn and I can be better. Don't just say something because one grade said so. Find the context of why. Find the understanding. And I think it's really cool.
Well, he didn't pass my eye test. I watched the game. I watched him fall over.
Go watch the All-22 because it'll tell more of a story than the game broadcast, because there's so much nuance with offensive line play. You need the All-22. And then if you watch it and you still think Ed Ingram bad, okay. I will respect that, because you went and tried to find the context. You went and took that extra step to try and learn and try and be better. And that will always have my respect. We may disagree, but I'll always respect that. I will always respect it. Because taking the time to understand and learn is always a good thing. Even if you disagree with me, I don't care if you disagree with everything I have to say. If you try and find the context and you just come to the other conclusion, bravo, good for you. And I mean that with all sincerity. I don't want that to come off like I'm being snarky. No, I genuinely mean it. That rules. Don't rely on a couple of small data points just because they support your argument, because there are plenty that'll disagree with you. You have to determine what's right and what's wrong. And there are a lot of ways to do it when it comes to analyzing football. Find the context.
I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Switching back to the defense. Did you think Harrison Phillips had a good game yesterday?
I thought so. He was causing multiple penalties in that first quarter. He was sliding. Graham Glasgow, I think, got 2 holding calls right away on him. Mm-hmm. I didn't notice him much after that, but I didn't necessarily see him as this massive negative either.
According to PFF, he had a 50 grade overall.
Interesting.
45.7 against the run. And I thought he was causing all sorts of havoc in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what they're seeing.
You know what I'm excited to do? I'm going to find the context of that. Yeah.
Watch the tape.
I can't wait. I cannot wait to find the text. I can't wait. And we're going to find the context, and we're going to be here, and we're going to be talking about it. Because context is king. Context. You got to have it, and you got to have the nuance. And that's why we try to deliver that every single time here on the Real Forno Show. And on Vikings First and SKOL, because that matters so much more. So much more. It matters.
It does.
Yeah. Well, Dave, I think that's our show.
Cool.
The Vikings are on 5-1, and there are a lot of things to take from this game. Some positive, some negative. And a huge rant by me. I hope everybody enjoyed it. But seriously, if you ever have any questions and you want to try watching the film, shoot me a message. I'll be glad to talk anything. I don't know everything, but I'm always striving to learn more, because you know what? I try to live by this quote, and it's from Vince Lombardi, and I don't want to hear any Packer that hate. Yeah, we hate the Packers, but Vince Lombardi is arguably the greatest coach of all time. Perfection is unattainable, but if we chase perfection, we can catch excellence.
Mm-hmm.
Always strive to be perfect, but realize you'll never get there. But in the process, you can become great. Sorry we couldn't do this live. I got to take care of my dogs. Tomorrow, I believe we'll have an episode of Scolders and Spice.
Yes,
Wednesday,
which
the
Real
Real Forno Show
after the loss.
Yep. Wednesday, Real Forno Show live at 6:05. Hopefully with a special guest talking Los Angeles Rams. Thursday, post-game show starts at the 2-minute warning. I'll be there. Dave will be there. We'll see if anybody else is able to join us. We might have Sal because the game is in Los Angeles. That would be nice, a nice addition. Jonas, who knows what his schedule is being in Germany. And Darren, well, nobody knows if he shows up. maybe we'll have something Friday from you and me. We'll kind of figure that out as we go. And then Saturday, 2 old bloggers, probably a more extended post-game show because they're not going to be able to preview a game. With that said, thank you guys so much for joining. I'm Tyler. He's Dave. Be better by learning something today. SKOL Vikings.
SKOL Vikings. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell to get notifications. It helps us grow this community that we all love, our Minnesota Vikings. And on behalf of Tyler Forness and myself, Dave Stefano, thank you so dearly for watching The Real Forno Show. SKOL, everyone! This has been a Vikings First and SKOL production, part of the Fans First Sports Network.